on lesson 12 of Galatians. We got 5 verses, and we've gone through verse 1 twice now in 2 weeks, and we're going to get through the other 4 verses this morning, because we've got one more week in the study of Galatians. And so this week we're going to get through these 5 verses. We might even touch on lesson 13 this morning if we kind of make it through there. And then next week we're going to get through the rest of Galatians, because I already told Ricky that he's going to do the first of these mini series, mini topics that we're going to be jumping into for the next things that we're going to go to. I told him, you're teaching September 1st. So he's already set up. And so Ricky will be here September 1st, and he's working on that first topic. I think it's going to take him 2 weeks to get through it, maybe 3 weeks. If it was me, might be 4 weeks, because it'd be hard to get through, but Ricky's way more efficient than I am. So it'll be 2 or 3 weeks to be able to get through that first topic. And then, and I think you're going to like these new topics that we're going to jump into. I shouldn't say this out loud, but I'm going to say it out loud anyway. What we're going to be doing is called systematic theology, but nobody wants to go to systematic theology. So what we're really doing is we're looking at 10 topics in the Bible, and these topics, sometimes we do a study like we're doing here. We're doing a book study. We're going to look in Galatians, and we're trying to figure out, okay, what was Paul trying to communicate when he wrote this letter? And we want to kind of dig in deep on this letter. Sometimes you do studies and you start, okay, let's look at the Bible, and we're going to do a study through the Bible. And Galatians is like a sliver of that kind of study. If you look at the Bible kind of front to back, that would be called biblical theology. What do we understand from the Bible looking front to back? Systematic theology is really interesting, because instead of kind of starting with the Bible and looking through, we start with a topic. What's the topic? And then we say, what does the Bible tell us about this topic? And so then we look across the Bible at the topic to see, what does the Bible say about this? And lots of times we know this is what I believe. And sometimes it's like, why do you believe what you believe? And so these topics sometimes is really good, because you say, okay, what's my belief? Let me go to Scripture and look at across Scripture. What does the Scripture say about it? And it's like, okay, so that's what supports why I'm believing what I believe about this topic. So we got 10 topics we're going to run through. So I think that'll be a really fun study to kind of go through. So we're going to have Ricky, Jim, Jerry. They're each going to take a set of topics and kind of walk us through each of the topics. So instead of me with okay, we're doing Galatians, it's going to take us a year to get through Galatians. No. Let's take topics, and we're going to do them at a 2 to 4 week hit in this topic. 2 to 4 weeks, get through that next topic. Okay, so it'll be a little bit easier than this 1 week lesson is going to take 3 weeks. Anyway, okay, so let's get back. So we're jumping into Galatians. We're working through chapter 6 now. Remember, there's no such thing as chapters, but we're jumping in. And as we looked in chapter 6, let me get to that verse. Okay, so at 6:1, here's the verse that we started talking about in the last 2 weeks. My brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. But watch yourselves, or you also may be tempted. So that's the verse that we kind of looked at. And that idea of, caught in a sin and restore a person who's caught in a sin. And sometimes we think of that when we read through it right front is, oh, we caught that person in a sin. And now we're supposed to do whatever it takes to make them not sin anymore. And I want to give you a little bit different idea around this, because what have we been talking about in Galatians as a whole? We've been talking about that idea of we're no longer following the rules. It's not the Old Testament legal system anymore. We're now living as a church. We're living under grace, and we're living under live by the Spirit. Now, when we talk about live by the Spirit, be in step with the Spirit. Now, is it my job to make sure you're in step with what the Spirit is telling me? No, the Spirit is inside of you. Now, in the Old Testament, that wasn't the case. The Spirit, didn't live inside of every believer. But in the New Testament, now that we have this understanding of who the Messiah is, now we know that the Spirit is living inside of each one of us. So the Spirit is living inside of you. The Spirit is living inside of you. The Spirit is living inside of you. The Spirit is living inside of me. And as that truth, each of us has the responsibility to walk in step with the Spirit. Live by the Spirit. And Paul just got done telling us, this is what happens when you walk by the flesh. Here's the things that you're going to see if you're walking by the flesh. Here's the things you're going to see as you walk by the Spirit. Love, joy, peace. Now, each one of us struggles with certain things. I would like to say some of us have different struggles than others. But normally what that means is we say, well, I don't struggle as much as him. But I don't live his life. Of course, I don't struggle as much as him. That's not the measure. I have my own struggles that I'm struggling with. Now, how in the world are you going to help me with my struggles? How in the world can I help you with your struggles? Or how can I let you help me with my struggles? The only way this happens is through community, is through relationships, is through spending time with each other and being open and honest with each other about this is what I'm struggling with. And so that's where Paul is turning this letter that he's written to us, and he's making this shift into, okay, what's that mean as we now live in community? What's that mean? It means that some of us aren't living in step with the Spirit. It's not that I've got this list of things that I'm not doing or I am doing. Now we see that what Paul says in Romans, right? I'm not doing the things that I should be doing, and I'm doing the things that I shouldn't be doing. So we all struggle with that. I mean, Paul struggled with that. We all struggle with that, of that idea of the question is how can we support each other? Now, fortunately, Hebrews kind of tells us as we live in community, right? We should spur each other on to love and good works. And when we look in the New Testament, this idea of love is like a central theme. What is the greatest command? Love the Lord thy God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And what's the second command right along with that? Love your neighbor. This idea of love is like a central theme, as opposed to where we were in the Old Testament of follow the rules. Here's the rules, follow the rules. In the New Testament, we have this different model that we're supposed to be following, working towards. So when we look at this, some of us, probably all of us, are at some level caught in certain sin. And we need the help of each other to help us through this. Now, What's it say here? You who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. That's kind of an interesting idea, restore somebody gently. But who should be doing that? Those who are living by the Spirit. So we all have this. If I'm going to help you, what's that mean that I need to be doing? Living by the Spirit. I need to make sure I am like in step with the Spirit in my life to be able to help you with your life. And what's that mean for you? You need to be, this idea in your head needs to be, this is what I want in my life. I want to, in my life, make sure that I'm in step with the Spirit. Which for me is this thing that like hits me right here sometimes, because it's one of those, what do I pray for my kids? I can see it that I need this for my kids. I really want my kids to be struggling with that idea of the Spirit working in their lives, and they're making the choices based on the Spirit working in their lives. That's what I want, and I pray for that. And when I see them struggling, it's like, well, I'm really glad that they're struggling. When they're making not choices that I think they should make, it's like, oh, how do I help them? It's not like when they were 5 and I can tell them, don't do that. Now they're 30. That's not how you interact with a 30-year-old to help them to be able to struggle with this is what I should be doing. And I can see that in my kids. But can I see that in my own life? I need to be walking by the Spirit. I need to be struggling with that. I need to be making sure that in my life I'm walking by the Spirit. And when I'm not, I want to be in relationship with those around me, for those that can help me. Which means that I need to be open with those around me to say, these are the things that I'm struggling with. And you can give me feedback to say, yeah, and you might be missing this thing that you're not seeing. But the only way that can happen is if we're in relationship, we're in this community and we're helping each other. But that's what that takes. But I need to at first have this idea in my own life. I want to be living by the Spirit. And living by the Spirit isn't following all the rules. It's not this list of do's and don'ts. Living by the Spirit is following the Spirit's leading in my life. And we see in a number of passages in the Bible where Paul talks about this idea of struggling with living by the flesh versus living by the Spirit. And how can I wrestle with that? Because we all have these things that we want. It's I want this. But we all need to back up and say, wait a minute, what does it mean for the Spirit leading me in my life? What does the Spirit want me to do? And that's a different struggle that we need to be working with personally and corporately. So, but let's keep moving on here, because it talks about that idea of we who live by the Spirit should help restore people that are struggling. But we need to watch ourselves, because even if it's like, yeah, no, I think I'm in step with the Spirit, I'm living by the Spirit. Lots of times we think, oh, well, pastor's got it because he's spiritual, right? Just because somebody is spiritual, does that mean they don't have problems? No, we have problems. And all of us, as we have problems, it's really easy to get caught. And so he says, even though you're in step with the Spirit, watch yourself. Because all of us can be tempted. And all of us, as we're tempting, it's like it's so easy to get off track and derail from this idea of, no, I need to be following the Spirit and the lead of the Spirit. And it's so easy to be caught in the flesh and what the flesh wants. But let's keep going. Then he says, in this idea of community, we need to carry each other's burdens. Carry each other's burdens. So what's that mean? There's this idea that we all struggle with stuff. We all struggle with stuff. We all have burdens. And in community, the only way that we can help each other is if we're sharing with each other, right? We have to be sharing with each other. And there are things that we all struggle with that we can help each other out with. But the only way we can help each other is if we're in community and we're sharing with each other and we're spending time together. And let me just give you a quick aside. Spending time with each other takes way more than 2 hours on a Sunday morning and a prayer list. Spending time in community means you're spending more time with each other. Now, we've got these connect groups, which is great because that helps us get connected with each other and spend 2 more hours every other week. Okay, good. That's great. We've got a prayer meeting time where we get together once a week and we share requests with each other. Okay, that's good. We're getting there, but community means we're friends. And we spend time together, and maybe we do more than that. Maybe we get lunch together. Maybe as families, we go to the park. In other words, there's so many more things that we can do. And as a people, we become very isolated, and we're very good at saying, I can carry my own burdens. I don't need your help. And as in the individualistic society we live in, that's what's expected. And when I ask you how you're doing, what's the right answer? Fine. I'm doing great. I'm doing better than fine. I'm doing great. Is that the right answer? Or is that the true answer? And was the question looking for the right answer? Or was I wanting the real answer? And so there's some level where we all struggle and we have to get past the right answer and the facade we put up to saying, no, you're one of my friends. And when you ask me how I'm doing, if you're a friend asking me how I'm doing, I need to tell you as a friend how I'm doing. And if I ask you, because you're my friend, how you're doing, I would expect you to tell me how you're doing. And if there's things that you're struggling with that I can help you with as a friend, would I want to do that? Yes. And if I know that you're my friend and I'm struggling with something, would you want to help me? How in the world can you help me if I don't tell you what help I need? You can't. So we have to get past that first step of I'm fine, or I'm better than fine, I'm great. to say, no, we're friends. And as friends, we expect a relationship that is more than just a Sunday morning, hi, how you doing? Glad you're good.
I think we expect that too, I mean, I don't think we should really say it as you're sharing it. If you don't really want to hear it and you're really only hear, I'm fine, and rush on, if you're not sincere about it, just say good morning, don't say how are you or good to see you and all, because if you're not ready to hear it, then I don't feel and if someone say, how are you? I don't think of them saying, them wanting to hear how I am.
Yeah, that is a great point.
I mean,
A great point, because
from me, I'll know it the next week.
it's like, oh my goodness, what did I get more than I bargained for? So you are absolutely correct, because when we ask, we're not asking. So somehow we need to communicate, no, I'm really asking, as opposed to, and maybe it's, hi, how are you? I'm glad you're fine. Or, hey, you look like you're doing great today. I don't know. Somehow we need to be able to communicate that idea of, no, how are you?
It takes time.
And it takes time.
It takes time to do that, like in the store. Hi, how you doing?
I say that to everybody.
Yes.
We take aside and say, hey, can I pray for you?
Yeah.
Let's have a word of prayer. It takes time to do that.
And
are we hypocrites? Is that a hypocrite? Is that being hypocritical?
I think that,
Unless you want to tell you, how am I really feeling today?
Yeah.
You got an hour,
Yeah.
just say how.
well, and some of that I think comes back to how we relate, because when we're coming in to Sunday morning and we say, hi, how are you? We don't have time. But what does it take to make time? So if I'm saying, hey, you want to grab lunch this week? Let's go grab lunch. Okay, if we're going to sit down for lunch and we're going to spend an hour together, now I've made it so that when I say, hey, how are you doing? We have the opportunity now to share. And when I say that, when we're spending an hour together, that's what I mean.
I think pride too. Dear pride, you really don't want to express what's going on with you. Pride hinders you. I know, like with me and struggling with the death of my son.
Mhm.
How are you, Bill? And so pride, I can't really express how I am. And there's lots like in unspoken. You can only talk to the Father about that.
Mhm.
But if
Yes.
you have a really good friend that you can trust and you can share your heart and they won't speak it to someone else, then
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
Point, very important that you, if there be sharing something with you that you don't.
Broadcast that everywhere else, exactly, yes, yes. And that's also a really good point. I'm glad you guys brought that up, because sometimes we share how we're doing, and Gloria, I'm gonna use you as an example, because your son died, okay? Sometimes we say, how are you doing? Oh, I know you're struggling, and it's like, okay, she said she's struggling. This is the third week in a row she said she's struggling. It's like some things we struggle with for years, not days. And we need to know, how can we support somebody that this takes a long time to get over? And Gloria's not going to be okay in days or weeks or years, or it will always be on her heart, because it doesn't go away. So how do we support somebody in the long term, over the long term? What does Gloria need today that can help her? And what does she need next week, next month, next year, but the same for me, for you, for each of us. What do we need today, knowing that we're not going to be better tomorrow? This isn't just oh, hey, I got this hangnail and I got a problem and it'll be better next week. Okay, so don't worry about me. These things are bigger than that. And so this is where we're talking about that idea of carrying each other's burdens so that we can fulfill the law of Christ. And what was the law of Christ? Love, right? So let's keep going here. If we look in Galatians earlier in his letter, he says, you, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free. Remember the freedom, the idea of we're not following the rules anymore. You're living by the Spirit. And as you live by the Spirit, you have freedom. But don't use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. What did he just get done saying later in the letter? Carry each other's burdens. Here he says it, serve one another humbly in love. For the entire law, not the Old Testament law, the new law that he's saying, this is what we live by now. The entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command. Love your neighbor as yourself. So the question then is, how can we love each other? And we can't do love each other without sharing with each other, without spending time with each other. Can't happen Sunday morning for 2 hours. It takes more than that to love each other. And so we have to commit ourselves to saying, for me to love you requires me spending more time with you and me sharing myself with you and expecting to hear from you. And how can I care for you? Let's keep going. In Ephesians, in his another letter, he says, as a prisoner for the Lord, then, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. As we read through Paul's letters, we see this idea of the Spirit, right? Living by the Spirit, keeping the unity of the Spirit. If we're all walking in step with the Spirit working in my life, and you walking with the Spirit working in your life, and we're all walking with the Spirit working in our lives, will there be discord? Will there be disunity? No, because the same Spirit is working in each of us in the same direction. So if we were following and in step with the Spirit's leading in our life, our goal is to love each other. And how do we love each other? We spend time with each other and we know how to take care of each other because we all have different burdens. We all have different needs. Let's keep going. So he says, but watch yourselves, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you'll fulfill the law of Christ. If anyone thinks that they are something when they're not, they deceive themselves. Which I think might get back to some of the comments there with pride. It's like, because this is two sides, right? One of them is, yeah, I'm good, I don't need your help. You're not good, you do need help. And the other is, the flip side of it is, okay, I am better than I think I am. I'm good at loving people, just so you know. And if you're not sure, just ask me, I'll tell you. So this idea of how do we know that we're something? How do we know? But keep going, because the answer is right here. Each one should test their own actions. It's your actions that prove where you're at. Now, is it you testing my actions? Is it me testing your actions? Is it? No. It's me evaluating my own actions, which gets me back into that idea of the Spirit working in my life. And am I following the flesh or am I following the Spirit? And evaluating that idea that, no, I need to make sure that I am in step with the Spirit. And I need to evaluate my actions as I evaluate my actions, as I'm in step with the Spirit, then I can take pride in themselves alone without comparing themselves to someone else. Because my actions are not something that is evaluated based on what somebody else does or says. I need to evaluate my actions by the Spirit leading in my life. Am I doing what I should be doing? Because then I get back to where Paul was, right? Paul said, oh man, I'm struggling with doing what I know I should be doing. And I'm not doing everything that I know I should be doing. And the things that I know I shouldn't be doing. So we're doing the same struggle that Paul does when we get here. And here he's saying, as you evaluate your actions, you can say, yeah, no, I'm in step with the Spirit. This is good. Or, man, I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with these things that the flesh is so hard. And I'm struggling with that. And I need those who are in walk with the Spirit to be able to help me with that struggle. And I need those who are my friends to help bear my burdens that make these struggles so difficult. Because lots of times our struggles are based in these burdens that we're struggling with, these weights that we're struggling with, that we think we've got to struggle with alone. And as we support each other, we realize, okay, wait a minute. It's not as hard to bear these burdens. They're still my burdens. There's still things that I'm struggling with, but I know that I have community that can help me with these and help me move from walking according to the flesh to walking in step with the Spirit, from sin to righteousness. But it's me and the Spirit working in my life that works through that. But then he doesn't stop there. He does one more thing, and he says this. This idea of I'm evaluating if my actions are right, my actions are in step with the Spirit. He then says, each one of us should carry our own load. And so we started with carry each other's burdens, and now carry your own load. It was just an interesting idea. Now, the words are different, actually. The burdens is the big overwhelming thing, and the load is kind of like a soldier's backpack, or we call it a backpack. Anybody that's been in the military knows it's not a backpack. Okay, it's a lot, but it's yours. And you don't expect the person next to you that's got their own load to carry your load. We each have our own load that we need, that we're responsible for carrying. But there's something in there where we're supposed to share and help each other carry our burdens and carry our own load. And so where is that line of what becomes more than the load that we should be carrying? And in some ways, you can look at it, if a soldier gets injured, do you expect him to carry his backpack? I say backpack, it's not a backpack. No, other people help carry that because this person needs help right now. They can't carry their own load. They may be doing good just to hold anything. Maybe they can't. In other words, what can you do right now? You should be responsible for that. But we need to make sure that we don't use that as a license or as a thing to distance other people. Can I do all this? Yes. Should I? And we each have to answer that question ourselves. What is something that I should be sharing so that you can help me? What is something that you should be sharing that I can help you with? Because without that, we're distancing ourselves and we're not living in community. So there has to be something that we know that we're willing to share. We're willing to say, I am struggling with this. I could use your support. Versus no. And maybe it goes back to this idea of you who are who live by the Spirit, are in step by the Spirit. It's like, no, I got this. I'm good. I feel like I am walking by the Spirit. I am able to carry my own load without issue and help others with theirs. But I still need to be honest with myself to know, wait a minute, what are the things that I'm struggling with so that I can share those with you so that you can help me? And always being willing to hear you so that I can help you. But it's not my job to evaluate you. It's your job to evaluate you. Are you living in step with the Spirit? Do you need help with that? Am I struggling with something? Do I need help with that? But it's not your job to decide what I'm struggling with. I need to be open and honest about this is what I'm struggling with, and I could use your help with, and vice versa.
It's hard too, because you think about, I know some, Gloria saying was struggling with her son and she struggled. And then I think, then how do I bring my struggles to her? You know what I mean? It's like, because I know she's struggling, so you can look at it two ways. I don't want to burden her with my struggles. Or I'm thinking, she's still struggling, so how can she help me? But my struggle is different. So you kind of cover that in that way, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do know what you're saying.
She has her load and my load is different, so I can bring, because she would have the wisdom maybe in my area, and I don't have experience, with Harris because of her son's death and
Yes.
circumstances. I'm really trusting God, it's like, I hope, I'm gonna pray, but I understand because I'm a mother if that happened.
Mhm.
So,
But-
so you don't want to burden somebody else when they're struggling.
So I think the short answer to that is this idea of each of us know when we're ready to help somebody else. So Gloria will get to a place where she can ask you how you're doing. But that doesn't stop you guys from getting together and you asking her, okay? And sometimes somebody that you're friends with that you really care about is struggling with something you can't help them with outside of being there. And being there sometimes helps way more than we know. And sometimes we get scared about, oh, this person, I don't know what to say. Oh, I don't know about that. I can't help. And so we don't ask. Or we don't just say, I'm just here to hang out and listen. So we stand off because we don't know. But does a friend, if you needed a friend, would you want them to stand off until you told them, hey, I need help? No, you would want them to come up and say, I don't know how to help, but I care about you. And that might be it. But what does it mean to be in relationship? What does it mean to be in community? What does it mean to help each other? Because that's where one thing that we struggle with as a group, everybody struggles with it. But in the US, we struggle with it a lot. And so that's where I want to leave it is it's something that we need to figure out how to get better at. Because Paul tells us that's our job. How can we love each other if we don't spend time with each other and care for each other? In that I'm over time, but I got through this one, so this lesson's done. Next week's lesson 13. Okay, let's close in prayer real quick, and then we'll get upstairs. Father, thank you for this opportunity to get together as friends who love you, and I pray as we wrestle through these scriptures that we would not only know what Paul was saying, what you wanted said, but that we would know how that applies to our life and what things we can do to make sure we're living in step with the Spirit personally, and so that we can help those around us as well with their burdens, with their struggles. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you much.